So I've been working to improve my space, make it more of a vibe, as it were. Last summer I started putting together this gallery wall, which I just recently finished. I made this faux stained glass lamp that I'm really proud of, and I put up this little shelf that you can't see right now, it's out of shot, but it's a cute little shelf with little things on it, and I like it a lot. But in between these two lovely vignettes, there's two, I promise, you just can't see the other one, there's this blank wall, dazzling shade of Arctic flower that I insisted on painting this room when I was 11, when I got the bigger bedroom when my older brother moved out. So I have a plan to cover this barren wasteland of middle school paint color choices with a tapestry, a lovely medieval inspired tapestry. Unfortunately, I do not own a loom yet, so it's not going to be an actual real woven tapestry. However, there is a very well-known example of a historical tapestry that is not a woven tapestry. It's actually an embroidery. It's the Bayeux Tapestry. I'm fairly certain I'm pronouncing it correctly if it's not pronounced Bayeux. I'm sorry to the French.
Bayeux.
But it's this really well-known French tapestry. It uses the Bayeux Stitch, named after the tapestry, which is kind of like a cross between a satin stitch and couching, and it's notable because it uses very little thread on the back of the fabric, so you're conserving yarn, which is important for the Bayeux Tapestry because it's freaking long. I didn't realize that until I found the museum's website, which was very helpful. I'll link that below. So, in today's video, I will be making a medieval inspired tapestry using some perhaps unconventional materials. I have already purchased some stuff. I have, don't mind me, a curtain rod from the hardware store. I have also purchased a very large embroidery hoop. It's actually for quilting, and drop cloth. So these are the materials and supplies that I purchased so far. Let's talk a bit about my design. My design was mainly inspired by the Scandinavian folktale of the Prince Lindworm. In this story, there's this queen who wants to have a baby, so she eats some magic roses, and they make her give birth to a Lindworm, which is a dragon-adjacent giant serpent thing. The Lindworm slithers off into the night and is out of the kingdom until the queen's human son tries to get married, and the Lindworm is like, "Nuh-uh, I'm the firstborn, I should get married first." So the king finds him a suitably noble-born bride. They get married, but then he eats her, so the king finds him another bride, but then he eats her too. So then the king forces a peasant girl to marry the Lindworm, but she goes and talks to a witch who tells her what to do. So on the wedding night, the girl wears 10 dresses, and when the Lindworm tells her to remove her dress so he can eat her, she tells him that he has to shed a skin first. So he does, and she takes off the dress, but she's still got the 9 bonus dresses, so they repeat this until the Lindworm has shed 10 skins and is all weakened. Then the girl hits him with a whip, dipped in lye, then pours milk on him, and then hugs him, and this turns him into a human. Somehow. And then everyone lives happily ever after, except for those 2 ladies that got eaten in the end. It's a much nicer story when you're not trying to tell it in under 30 seconds. It's actually very sweet, and it has that very familiar fairy tale structure, but also the randomness you see in a lot of folktales, and I just find that really fascinating. And it's referenced in The Queen of Nothing by Holly Black, which I just finished rereading at the time when I had the idea to make this, so you could think of this as hand-embroidered fan art that I'm going to hang over my bed. You could think of it like that. The story also has a ton of imagery that works really well with the motifs I was seeing in a lot of my references. So for my design, I wanted to have the Lindworm and the peasant girl, of course, and I have them kind of in the midst of the turning him human process. So she's got the multiple dresses shedding off of her, and he's still a giant lady-eating serpent, but he's being chill about it. For the lady's design, I took inspiration from pre-Raphaelite art, which itself was inspired a lot by medieval art. I was also, of course, inspired by actual medieval tapestries. I included a border of roses and vines to reference the roses that the queen eats. Most of the historical references I looked at were very flat in that there's no background and that all the figures are standing on the same plane. Coincidentally, this is also a lot easier to draw, so I chose to emulate that kind of style. Some of them also have these like floating flowers growing out of a field of green that I really liked the look of, so I incorporated those in as well. When I was preparing my notes for this video, I knew I wanted to mention pre-Raphaelites as a source of inspiration, so I wanted to do just a little bit of research to make sure I was getting things correct, and I ended up going down a Wikipedia rabbit hole, and I started reading about William Morris, who is an artist that I love, and then I started reading about his wife Jane Morris, who was a model for a number of different pre-Raphaelite painters and artists. So if you've ever thought, wow, a lot of the ladies in these paintings look the same, it's because half of them are the same person. They're all Jane Morris. I also found out that Jane Morris was an embroidery artist, and so was her sister, Bessie Burden, and they both worked on these embroidered panels designed by William Morris that were inspired by Chaucer's Legend of Good Women, and their depictions of different, like, famous historical and mythological women. And I am obsessed with these, and they're weirdly similar to my design, which is just from us pulling from the same influences and sources, which is cool. So then I started reading about Jane's sister Bessie Burden, and she was actually a teacher at the Royal School of Needlework in the 1870s. And there's actually a stitch named after her in the school's official handbook from 1880, and it's a part of their online stitch bank that's still available today. I'll link that below. But I got like genuinely emotional reading about Jane and Bessie, who were these women who were involved in one of my favorite art movements from my favorite period of history that I had never heard of. And they made these pieces that are so similar to my own. And Bessie worked for this institution that was dedicated to preserving the art of needlework that still exists today and is a resource that I can use to learn more and improve my own skills. I wish I'd known about this a year ago when I started this project, but it's still really cool to learn about now. We are all threads woven into the tapestry of the world, or embroidered into it. Anyway, now that I have my design all figured out, I can transfer it onto the canvas. Next, I measured and cut my fabric, hemmed the edges, and added a channel at the top for the curtain rod. I added some holes to this channel so I could support the center of the rod with hooks when I hang it up. I ended up ripping open this channel so I can embroider that area without worrying about sewing it shut, but it'll come back in the end. It's tracing time. So, I've got this hung up very jankily. One end is balanced on the edge of an open drawer on my dresser. The other end is on my bed, on a little side table, on a box. I've got both ends weighted down with sandbags. I've got the printout haphazardly taped and pinned to the back. And I'm aware the lighting in the shot is not very good, but it's because I have all of my desk lamps turned on, pointed to here. I'm just gonna use Sharpies to mark this out because it's gonna get painted over and then embroidered over, so you're not gonna see it, hopefully. So I'm going to turn off all the overhead lights to make this shot even more backlit and get tracing. Next came the painting. I wanted to paint the canvas to match the color of the yarn that would be going in each area, so if there were any gaps in my embroidery, it wouldn't be quite so noticeable. I started painting at my desk, and then quickly realized I needed a little more room.
Okay, so I'm really overpainting this thing. You can tell because I started over here and I kind of worked my way up and around, and you can see the difference in my attention to detail. I think I'm gonna embroider the whole background, which I know is more work than just painting it, but it's work I would prefer to do. I can do the embroidery sitting in a chair instead of like crouching on the floor trying to paint this. It is kind of irritating because I came to that decision partway through, so this darker section is not watered down paint, so it's going to be difficult to get a needle through that area, but them's the breaks. All we can do is keep moving forward. I still got all this left to paint.
So yeah, I'm gonna check back in when the rest of this is all painted, which will probably be another 6 weeks. So see you then. With the painting done, I could finally start actually embroidering. I think for the embroidery, I'm gonna go color by color and do like all the white, all the pink, all the yellow, all the red. I'm gonna start with the white so I can cover up this rose in the corner that I started to paint red and then realized was supposed to be white. And it bothers me, so I'm gonna fix it and cover it up. So let's get stitching. Okay, I finished one rose. This took 45 minutes. I think I'm just gonna buckle down and work on this for the rest of the night. And we'll see how far we get. We'll see how many weeks this takes me.
Honey, you've got a big storm coming.
So it's the next day. Been working on this for a little while. I know I said yesterday I was going to do all of one color over the whole thing. Immediately went back on that. I needed to see more immediate progress to feel more motivated. So I switched to working on the Lindworm himself because it's a larger area and will go by a bit quicker. I've also switched to a different needle. The one I was using has a bigger eye, but the end is blunt, so it's easier to thread, but it's difficult to get through the fabric. So I've switched to a different one that has much smaller eye, but the end is pointed. I also haven't been using the Bayeux Stitch like I talked about in my planning section, because I haven't done any really big segments like this. I don't feel I need the couching to hold that down, but once I get to like this stuff where it's like that long, I think that's when the Bayeux Stitch is going to be very helpful. I did want to say thank you to all the people who have subscribed to my channel so far. I think right now, as I'm filming this, there's about 200 people. I think it's like 230 something, which I know in like the grand scheme of everything on the internet, that's not like a huge number, but like the way I think of it, like that's more people than were in the biggest lecture classes I ever took in college. And that was a lot of people. If all of you were all sitting in a room and I had to sit in front of you and talk about stuff, I'd throw up. I would throw up in front of you. So thank God you're not all in my room. And that's how you can tell I filmed this a year ago. There are now about 4,000 of you guys subscribed to this channel, so I'm even more glad you're not all in the room watching me embroider. That would get a little too cozy, I think. But seriously, thank you all for sticking around and watching me work on my weird little projects. It blows my mind that anyone would want to spend their free time watching me yap about folklore and embroidery, let alone this many of you. So truly, from the bottom of my heart, thank you all. And if you're not subscribed, but you would like to see more of stuff like this from me, probably not more embroidery anytime soon, my fingers are still recovering, but other fun, crafty projects, consider subscribing. I would love to have you. Once my work had been thoroughly inspected, I was cleared to continue with the embroidery. So I know I totally just breezed through like 3 months of work. Most of it was very repetitive, but I will go into a little more detail on a few things. Like the lady's face. I stitched and restitched it multiple times to get it right. The first attempt did not look correct. I was trying to emulate the subtleties of the faces in my references while still maintaining a more modern, kind of cartoony style. I really like the final result, so I'm glad I took the time to try and get it just right. For her clothing, I wanted to capture the texture of the cloth in the embroidery, so I made my stitches follow the way the fabric would fold if it were crumpled on the ground like this. I used big chain stitches to create the shape of the creases. I used chain stitches for other details too, like the petals on the phlox and marigold flowers, though I think these are more like lazy daisy stitches. I also used a chain stitch for the vines around the border to get a heavy, continuous line. This looked really great, but I found it was difficult to work on my embroidery hoop since it was so close to the edge. The solution to this was to upgrade my frame game. I decided to try and build an embroidery scroll frame out of PVC pipe. Here's a quick breakdown. I used 8 90-degree L joints, 4 T joints, and 14 PVC pipes cut to the lengths shown on screen. I assembled them as shown in this diagram and used PVC glue on most of the connection points. I didn't glue the 2 longest pipes so I could break down the frame for easier storage. I wouldn't necessarily recommend this design since it was very wobbly, it was hard to get good tension, it fell apart a few times when I was using it, but it did get me to the end of this project and it used mostly materials that I had on hand. So, you know, follow at your own risk. I didn't film any of the process of building the frame because it was simultaneously very stressful and not that interesting. I basically just cut the pipes and glued them together, but the glue and the glue primer were just very annoying to work with, and I was using a chop saw for the first time, which I did not enjoy. Very big, very scary, was worried about my thumbs the whole time, so no footage of that, but after a little quality assurance inspection, I was able to set up my canvas in the frame. To set up the fabric on the frame, I wrapped it around the 2 long horizontal pipes and clamped them in place. I secured the short ends by stitching the edges of the fabric to the frame with lace weight cotton crochet thread. Later on, I figured out I could lace rope around the handles of the clamps so I could force them to pull the fabric in tighter and create more tension in the fabric to make it a little bit easier to work with. By August, I had basically stopped working on the tapestry. The frame became another horizontal surface for me to put stuff on, and it was just taking up space in my room. So I disassembled the frame and packed away the tapestry so I could focus on other things for a little while. I don't think I'm in frame. So it's February of 2025. I think the last time I worked on this was October? September? I genuinely don't remember. So I want to start working on this again. It's been a while. I'm in the mood for embroidery again. So from what I remember, there were a bunch of like roses and stuff along the border that I needed to work on. And I think I'm gonna do those in the hoop instead of putting it in the, ow! And I think I'm gonna do those in the embroidery hoop instead of the frame, just to have the frame up for as little as possible because it takes up so much space. And then be able to do just the background in the frame, which should go quicker. So I guess I need to unroll it now. Let's do that. Did I not finish the flowers? I thought I finished those. What the heck? Oh no, there's more than I thought. I thought I had finished all these background flowers. I don't know why I thought that. There's a bunch still not done. Oh no. Okay, so let's do that first. Definitely want the hoop for that. Gonna get started on embroidering again and see if I can finish it this year. I would like to finish this in the month of February. I'm not confident now looking at it, but we will do what we can. Okay, so I have finished working on all of the background flowers that I thought were done months ago, and I'm almost done working on the border flowers with the roses and the vines and the leaves and all that. I've got like this last hoop section to do, and so the only thing left is the background color, which I started the background color in this specific shade of dark green. This yarn, this Big Twist Living in pine green, and it's just very specific, warm, dark green. And if you're familiar with Big Twist, you know it's a Joann's brand. It's their like store label. It's February of 2025, so Joann's just announced that they're closing 500 of their stores. We went to our like nearest Joann's yesterday, and things are starting to go on sale, but they didn't have the specific color of yarn, so I wasn't able to get more. I don't know if I'll have enough. I haven't run out of any of the yarn I've been using, but I need the most of this color, and I have like a little less than one skein. I do have another yarn on hand that's similar. It's like the same like value shade, but it's a cooler green. I think I could get away with it if I had to, but I'd prefer to just use the same color. Anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit about putting projects on hold, because I started this in April of last year, so it's been 10 months, and we're going on a full year of working on this. Like 10 months is a long time to be working on something, and granted, this is a big project, so it makes sense that it would take a long time, but a lot of that time I just wasn't working on it. I wasn't doing anything, and that's okay. That's not a crime. This is something that like I think and feel, so maybe you don't have the same issue, but I think this is a fairly common feeling among people who make stuff, that like having works in progress and not finishing things quickly enough is like bad, and that's just not true. I mean, it's different if like it's your job or if it's like something for school, because then obviously there's deadlines and you need to, you know, fulfill commitments and that kind of thing. But I'm doing this for fun. This is supposed to be fun. If I'm working on this and it's no longer fun, then I've like lost the plot. I think it's important to keep that in mind, that like I'm working on this because I like to embroider and I want to have some big embroidery hanging on my wall, but wanting the finished product is not as important to me as the process of making it. Like the actual act of like putting a needle through fabric is what's enjoyable for me. And when it's done, I'll have this like lovely reminder of all the hard work that I put in and the time I enjoyed spending on it. But the time is the point. The process is the point. The medium is the message. Marshall McLuhan, not what this is about. And if you take anything away from this video, I want it to be that it's okay to like put projects on hold. You'll get it done eventually. The time will pass. You will come back to it later on and feel motivated and inspired to work on this again. And you will get more out of the experience than if you just push yourself through and rush and make yourself finish it because like it's been so long, I need to get it done. Like, no, you don't. You can take your time. You can be chill about it and just enjoy the process and have a good time. And I think the finished product will be better overall. Like, I put this project down and didn't look at it for months. And when I finally got it out, I was so excited to work on it. I had found myself like thinking about this. Like, I'd be at work and I would be like daydreaming about working on this project, and I'm like, okay, so it's time to start working on this again. It's good to take your time and enjoy the process. So yeah, I'm on the last leaf of this border, and I'm taking my time doing all the little stitches, and I'm gonna need a new length of yarn in a moment because this one's too short, and that's kind of annoying because I have like half a leaf left, but it's fine. With the border done, I can move back to the big frame. I spent basically every spare second I had working on this thing. If I wasn't sleeping or at work, I was embroidering. Here is a quick look at the clamp lacing thing that I mentioned earlier to put more tension on my fabric. It wasn't perfect, but it definitely made it easier to stitch. Once I finished the background, I took the tapestry off the frame finished the edges with a whip stitch, and then sewed the rod pocket along the top shut again. And just like that, the embroidery was all done. To hang the tapestry, I used these interlocking command strips that are meant for picture frames, but I just stuck them to some regular command hooks that I spray painted gold. Then I could sleeve the tapestry onto the curtain rod, and I could finally hang the tapestry where it belongs. It's done. It's done. I can finally rest. I'm so happy with this finished product. It looks so good. I'm just so happy to have this blank wall finally covered. I'm so happy with it. Worth the year of almost non-stop embroidery. There's lint on it. I think using the drop cloth was a good idea. It's a good weight for the whole tapestry, and it has like a slightly open weave, so it's easy enough to get the needle through, but not too loose that it can't support the embroidery, so I think that was a good choice. I also really love the look of the Bayeux Stitch. It looks really cool. It makes it look like a textile, which I don't think that makes any sense to say, but it does. I do think my tension in the Bayeux Stitch was like not the best. Obviously there's a lot of warping and wiggliness. I actually had to go in and add a strip of, this is like plastic strapping off of some packaging that I stole out of the dumpster at my office, but just to kind of reinforce this bottom edge, because it's already, like, even with the strapping, it's really wavy. Before that, it was a lot worse. And that's because the tension on my embroidery was too tight, so it's causing the base fabric to warp and pucker. I do also kind of think my couching stitches could have been tighter together. Looking at more references of like the Bayeux Tapestry, they're much closer together. This is like, some of these floats are like really big, but it is what it is. The main benefit of using the Bayeux Stitch was reducing the amount of yarn used, because I used way more yarn than I thought I would. I used 3 skeins of just the dark green on the background. That's like 770 yards of yarn, and that's just covering the front. Like, I'm gonna show you the back of my embroidery. That's an extreme sign of trust, so don't betray that and judge me, but like, you can see the back has very little stitching compared to the front that's fully covered. And with like a traditional satin stitch, you're going all the way around through the fabric, so you're covering the back as much as the front. So if I'd done a traditional satin stitch for the background, I would have doubled my yarn usage. That would have been like a lot more. So Bayeux Stitch, definitely helpful for that. I'm also glad that I did the back painting, as annoying as that was, but it was definitely worth it to hide the base color of the drop cloth, like especially on the worm itself, because I have a lot of really big floats. There's definitely like little gaps where you can see through to the back cloth. The one thing that I really regret with the back painting was going too heavy and too thick with the paint. If you're gonna do this, water down your paint. Do not do a big thick coat of acrylic like I did for some areas. It's so hard to sew through. It's so annoying. I had to use pliers at some points. Not worth it. Just do very watered down washes, multiple layers if you need to, especially the like section of the background where I started painting when I was initially planning on just painting it. Remember how I said I was gonna paint the background and not embroider it? Crazy. And I am really glad that I did the whole background as embroidery instead of just painting it. Like I said, I think it looks really cool. It looks like a textile, which again, I don't know what I mean by that, but it's what I mean. I'm just so happy. I haven't, like, working on it, I didn't really get the chance to like look at the whole thing as a whole finished piece, because I'm always like looking at the one embroidery hoop or the one frame section, but just like the whole full finished piece, I love it so much. Oh my god. And I think it really like fills in this corner of the room very nicely. So yeah, I'm really happy with it. I'm really happy to be done working on it. Oh my god. I hope you like it too. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, consider liking the video. It really helps me out. So thank you again so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. That's how long it's been since I've worked on this.